Things have certainly changed in the past week across North America, and specifically the Northern Plains, Upper Midwest. A lot of it related to the cool weather that's come in. Of course, a lot of it also had to do with the big rain which fell last week, especially across the eastern Dakotas into Minnesota, and then a couple of little snow systems since then that have fairly dramatically changed the soil moisture situation over the Upper Midwest. To the high plains out to the west, it's still extremely dry, and the outlook is still fairly dry, so I do look at that as something of a blip. Going back to Easter, we had a lot of warm weather in early April, and that was due to call it the polar vortex is a little bit of a stretch, but it's a word that gets bandied around a lot when it comes to these types of air outbreaks out of the north. But back during late March and April, we had the fairly typical strong circulation around the North Pole, and for the most part cold weather. The really Arctic cold was locked up in Arctic regions, but that allowed the warm weather to come north into the northern plains when we got a jet stream that moved north. Well, since that time, the polar jet stream, and in particular in this section of it across the pole, has really gotten kind of squeezed and longed. It's a polar vortex disruption, and these get a little rare this time of year. You don't usually see these in April, but it has allowed for this colder weather to drop back into the northern plains, and it looks like it may stay cool for a while. Now, we really have a more active jet stream than that. It's not particularly strong over North America, but it is split into two parts, and this has allowed for some cool weather to kind of reinvigorate itself across the northern plains. We're melting. We're not seeing it below freezing all day. That stuff is still up in Canada, but it's fairly cool to start out this period. Warm weather in the southeast and very warm weather out along the west coast, where things have gotten very, very dry this spring because there just weren't very many rainstorms during the course of the winter. That warm weather, as in temperatures into the 70s, going to extend all the way up into western Canada for quite a bit of this 2-week period. Meanwhile, the weather across the rest of the U.S. will stay generally cool to mild into the northern plains, maybe a brief intrusion of warm air, but it won't likely linger very long. As we go into the second week, that split is still there. That's going to keep the Arctic air really locked up into the north. It looks like we may see some moderation into the northern plains toward the end of April, and it may be a little bit of stormy weather in the south toward the end of the period. That's where I think the weather will be the wettest over the next 2 weeks. For this first week, definitely some showers and thunder showers in the southeast, nothing more than a stray flurry or sprinkle in the northern plains. And then for the last week of the period, which will be April 25th to May 1, still looks pretty dry in the northern plains, especially the western high plains. Rain and thunder showers and storms will expand into the Midwest, but not go too far west.